What could an 88-year-old woman possibly do to end up behind bars? It sounds like the beginning of a joke, but for Lucille Keppen from Minnesota, it was a harsh reality. Her story isn't about a hardened criminal. It's about a quiet, elderly woman who loved her town, her garden, and her independence. So how did things go so wrong that she found herself in a jail cell? This is the perplexing and heartbreaking story of Lucille Keppen. Lucille lived in the small town of Little Falls, Minnesota. For over 60 years, she resided in the same home, a place filled with memories of raising her family. She was known by her neighbors as a kind but private woman. She enjoyed simple things, tending to her flowers, watching the birds, and living a peaceful life. But that peace was shattered by something that might seem trivial to most of us: garbage. It all started with a city ordinance. Little Falls, like many towns, decided to streamline its waste management by requiring all residents to use a single, city-contracted garbage collection service. For most people, this was just a minor change, a new bill to pay. But for Lucille, it was a matter of principle. She was a frugal woman, a product of the Great Depression era. She believed in not being wasteful. She recycled, she composted, and she produced so little trash that she felt paying for a weekly service was completely unnecessary. She would simply take her single, small bag of garbage to the local dump herself whenever she needed to, paying a small fee each time. It was a system that had worked for her for decades. So when the city told her she had to pay for a service she didn't want or need, she refused. Lucille wasn't trying to be a rebel. In her mind, she was standing up for her right to choose, to live her life as she saw fit, especially on her own property. She sent letters to the city council, explaining her position. She argued that she was already responsibly disposing of her waste and that forcing her to pay for a redundant service was unfair. She even offered to prove how little trash she generated. But the city's hands were tied by the ordinance. The rule was for everyone, with no exceptions. As the months went by, the unpaid garbage bills started to pile up. What began as a small monthly fee grew with late penalties and administrative charges. The city sent her notices, which she continued to protest. From the city's perspective, they were just enforcing a law that applied to all citizens equally. From Lucille's perspective, they were trying to bully her into paying for something she didn't use. It was a classic standoff between a determined individual and an immovable bureaucracy. The total amount she owed eventually ballooned to several $100s. The city, seeing no other option, took her to court. Imagine being 88 years old and receiving a court summons over trash bills. Lucille, ever resolute, represented herself. She stood before the judge and calmly explained her reasoning. She wasn't a lawbreaker, she argued, but a responsible citizen being unfairly penalized. She believed the judge would see the logic in her argument and rule in her favor. But the law is the law. The judge found her guilty of violating the city ordinance. The sentence wasn't for the unpaid bills themselves, but for failing to comply with the court's order to pay them. The judge, likely not wanting to send an elderly woman to jail, gave her a choice: pay the fines or serve time. For Lucille, the choice was clear. Paying the fine would mean admitting she was wrong, that her principles didn't matter. So, she chose jail. And so, in the summer of 2005, 88-year-old Lucille Keppen was escorted to the Morrison County Jail to serve a 48-hour sentence. The news spread like wildfire. An elderly woman jailed over garbage bills? It seemed absurd. The story was picked up by local news, then national news, and soon the world was talking about the grandmother from Minnesota. People were outraged. How could a system be so rigid, so heartless, as to imprison an octogenarian for such a minor offense? The public outcry was immense. Donations poured in from strangers across the country to pay her fines. People sent her letters of support, calling her a hero for standing up to City Hall. Her jail cell was flooded with flowers. The 2 days she spent in jail turned her from a quiet, private citizen into an unlikely symbol of defiance against bureaucratic overreach. The sheriff's department reported she was a model inmate, quiet and cooperative. She spent her time reading and watching television, just waiting for her sentence to be over. When Lucille was released, she was greeted by a crowd of reporters and supporters. She was a little bewildered by all the attention. In her mind, she hadn't done anything heroic. She had simply stood by her convictions. She calmly told the reporters, "I am not a freeloader. I just don't want to pay for a service I don't use and don't need." Her simple, direct honesty resonated with millions. In the aftermath, the city of Little Falls faced a public relations nightmare. They were portrayed as the villains in this story, a heartless bureaucracy that bullied a sweet old lady. The city administrator tried to explain their position, stating that they had to enforce the ordinance for everyone to be fair, but their explanations were drowned out by the wave of public sympathy for Lucille. Eventually, a benefactor, an anonymous businessman from Florida, stepped in and paid her entire fine, which had grown to over $400. Lucille Keppen returned to her quiet life, but she was never quite the same. She had become a local celebrity, a folk hero. Her story serves as a powerful reminder of what can happen when common sense gets lost in the rigid application of rules. Was Lucille stubborn? Yes. Could she have just paid the bill and avoided the whole ordeal? Of course. But her stand was about more than just a few dollars. It was about dignity, independence, and the right to live life on one's own terms. Sadly, Lucille Keppen passed away just a few years later, in 2008, at the age of 91. She lived out her final years in the same house she had fought so hard to maintain her independence in. Her story remains a fascinating case study. It forces us to ask questions about our own communities. How do we balance the need for uniform rules with the unique circumstances of individuals? When does enforcing the letter of the law violate its spirit? Lucille's story shows that sometimes the smallest battles can have the biggest impact, turning an ordinary person into an extraordinary symbol of quiet resistance. Thank you for watching. What do you think about this situation? Was the city right to enforce its ordinance, or did they go too far? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story compelling, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories.